So we got 31 stab wounds.
What was it?
Ice pick.
Is she a suspect?
She intended the book to be her alibi.
Games are fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Listen to Pavarotti. Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I am your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. And in this episode, this is a bonus episode in the Dylan series because it's interesting. When I think about things like the non-dissemination order, making sure that we are not able to see all the things that we wanted to see for so long to try to figure out things in this case, all the theories that we came up with around the circumstances, waiting for the information. Then we get what we feel like is the information. You know, we get actual interviews, we get witness statements. Now we get new unsealed docs that have statements that we've been waiting for this entire time, even though they're not complete, as I'm going to show you in this video. But what they enable us to do with every new release, every new little piece of information that they want to serve up to us on a silver platter, gets us one step closer to the truth of the events in this case, what really went on, what law enforcement actually knows, and what we now know. By the end of this video, you will know as well, because my method of investigating is completely different than most people's. I simply use deduction. I gather as much possible information as I can on a subject. Based on the information at hand, I correlate it with everything else that I know in this case, and I come up with a theory. And then I sit back and I fine tune those theories until I get more information, which allows me to add it to everything else that I know and either confirm or adjust the theory as appropriate. And now, with this new information that I'm going to share with you in this video, I can definitively say, based on the information that's been released to us, that our suspicions around one of those roommates in the case are very, how should I say, founded? Not only founded, but proved to be diabolical. Diabolical. And it just happens to be the one whose boyfriend's father is a member of a prison gang. Come on, folks. Can we get this thing nailed down? But over the years, I've gone back and forth on these roommates. I mean, were they involved? Could they have been partly, in collusion? Were they, I tried to, make, I don't even know how to say it. I tried to minimize their possible actions just out of sheer, didn't want them to be part of anything. But now that we have this information, what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you, based on the information that they've released, literal proof of collusion, literal proof that Dylan knew what was going to happen in this crime 2 hours before it happened. And I'm going to show you what law enforcement likely knows as well. And considering the main piece of evidence that I'm going to be focusing on, even though I'm using several different documents to prove this in this video, but the main piece of evidence I'm going to be focusing on was what was attached to a defense motion in limine, bushy eyebrows. Because until that was attached to this motion, we had never got to see it. I've known for a long time every interview that Dylan had given to law enforcement, because we were able to grasp all of the interviews from the initial filings. If you go back to my old videos over a year ago before the plea deal, I'd already identified through the filings that Dylan had given interviews on the day of the crime, actually 2 of them on the day of the crime, one on the 17th. Then there was a mysterious forensic interview with the FBI on December 1st. Then finally the December 30th interview with Lake. And then when all of the videos of the interviews started to come out, the one that I was always most interested in was the one on December 1st, because I knew that was going to be around the time frame where things were getting interesting in this case. And they released the Nunez body cam talking to Dylan. They released Mowry's interview with Dylan. They released Gooch's long interview with Dylan. Then they released Lake's interview with Dylan, but they never did release the Williamson interview, the one that I really wanted to see, because I figured that was going to be the one that told us what we needed to know. And now that they have released some of it, well, has it told us what we needed to know? I need you to hold on to your hats, folks, because this is the biggest deep dive into this situation that you could possibly imagine, and it shows literal proof. In my humble opinion, Dylan knew what was going to happen in this crime 2 hours before it ever happened. Hold on to your hats, your socks, put your hands over your ears, because your brains will be bursting out of your head if you don't. Let's roll. This is about to get absolutely insane on Dylan. And I have to think that they figured this out, because they seem to be, they're investigators, FBI, they had to have figured this out. But if they didn't, oh my goodness. I'm going to go through this, because I was going through just pulling all the statements for Dylan part 4, but I got sidetracked on this, and I've been working on it pretty much for hours and hours and hours. And of course, I'm using my Grok assistant as I do this, but here's what we know. When it comes to Dylan, here's her timeline. We got the 13th, the atrocity. Immediately after Nunez arrives, the first interview with Dylan happens. So just right after noon, we got Nunez and Dylan giving her first statements. Not once in that statement does she ever mention calling or texting Quinn. Then we go to the interview later on that day with Mowry. Once again, she never once mentions calling or texting her boyfriend Quinn. Then 4 days later, Gooch and Blaker meet up with Dylan and Gooch really does a thorough interview of Dylan. Never once does she mention calling or texting her boyfriend Quinn. And she even specifically says that she basically didn't call or text anybody outside of the house. So between November 17th, and by the way, you can follow along the same progression with Bethany. Atrocity, Nunez questions her. Back at the station, I believe it was Blaker that questions her. And then on the 16th, Blaker travels all the way to Nevada and questions her. And then they never even bother questioning her again. Her stops there. But Dylan's doesn't. Now, between November 17th and the forensic interview with Williamson on December 1st, something happens. They're able to extract all of Dylan's phone activity. On December 1st, the only time the FBI gets involved with interviewing Dylan for the forensic interview is when Williamson does it on the 1st. And then nothing else happens until December 30th when Detective Lake does the final interview with Dylan. But here's what we know from this. When Gooch was talking to Dylan, she asked her, "Were you processing any danger? And Dylan hurries up and says, "No, it was just like, obviously I was scared because I was like, why is there someone in the house? But like when I thought about it, I was just like, we had parties here a lot." Now I want to stop right there and fast forward to December 1st in the Williamson interview. And I'm going to go right to the part where Dylan finally admits, also, like, I had texted my boyfriend. First time that's ever been brought up. The only reason it's been brought up is because Williamson started off with, "I got some text and pictures and stuff that I need to talk to you about." So Dylan knew she had to bring this up. And remember, we've already covered this in the Williamson forensic interview format. They take evidence that they collected, such as text messages and subject statements and audio clips, and they introduce that to the person they're interviewing in the beginning to prompt them. So in the beginning of the interview, Aaron Williamson says to Dylan, yeah, so I want a couple things. One, I forgot to mention, I've got some chats and some pictures that we may look at. See if you can help me out with them. I'll let you know when we get there. I just like to let you know that from the beginning. Dylan, okay. That's part of their free narrative part of the forensic interview. And then she goes on to ask her to just tell her everything from beginning to end, and she doesn't interrupt. Right? So you're going to be talking a little bit about kind of like when you woke up and calling your friends. Yeah, I want you to go back to the beginning, like Saturday. Yeah, when the night started, and have her tell her everything. Remember, Williamson then shuts up. All she says from that point is, lets Dylan tell the whole story. And that's where Dylan gets into talking about texting her boyfriend, Quinn. And then she follows it with, I don't remember exactly what time. And I was like, there's someone in our house. And Kaylee said someone was here and someone was crying in the bathroom, but I don't understand what's going on. And he was like, well, you guys have a party house. So it's very interesting the way that she starts off exactly what Quinn told her. He was like, well, you guys have a party house. And then I go back to the interview she was doing with Gooch. But when I thought about it, I was just like, I mean, we had parties here a lot. You guys have a party house. It's exactly what Quinn told her to, I would say told her to think, but it looks to me like when we're done with this, it's exactly what Quinn told her to say. I mean, we had parties here a lot. People come in and out all the time. It's normal for people to come in like with other people. Like that's not weird. And he was like, you guys have a party house. Could it just be like someone had just been drunk walking through? It's normal for people to come in like with other people. That's not weird. She's going through the Gooch interview with almost word for what she later says that Quinn told her. But here's where it gets interesting. Gooch specifically asked her, so did you ever call anyone outside the house? Dylan responds with, no, it didn't cross my mind. I was just calling my roommates. You know, it's like my closest friends who I trust, meaning her roommates. I called Ethan at one point. I mean, let me go on Snapchat. I don't know if it's still there or not. Fast forward to the Williamson interview. I also had text my boyfriend. I don't remember exactly what time. And I was like, there's someone in our house. And Kaylee said someone was here and someone was crying in the bathroom, but I don't understand what's going on. And he was like, well, you guys have a party house. And then all this happens. So clearly she lied to Gooch here. What happens is the forensic interview was conducted by Williamson after the phone extraction because they weren't able to see the actual messages. It was done to get Dylan to admit what was said on the snaps to Quinn. I've been going through this with Grok, putting everything in, researching, and in 2022, they likely, with the Celebrite extraction, would have seen when those Snapchat messages were made, possibly who they were made to, but they wouldn't be able to see what the Snapchat messages actually said. May not have been able to even tell who it was the messages were happening with. So that's the whole reason that Williamson came in and conducted a forensic interview with Dylan, because they found those snaps. They knew that she had omitted it and she was in there, and that's why she prompted her with it, because she was trying to get her to tell the truth. So we know they utilized Celebrite in the phone extractions to try to get as much information as they could in this case, both the defense and the state. So what Celebrite generally could not reliably recover in 2022, actual message text content, especially disappearing ephemeral Snapchat messages. Why the content was usually missing? Snapchat is designed to delete messages from the device after they are viewed or after a short time. By the time a phone is extracted, often days or weeks later, the actual text of many messages no longer exists on the device. The app uses its own databases and caching system that aggressively removes content. Even with a good file system or advanced logical extraction, if the message body had already been deleted by the app, Celebrite could not magically bring it back in most cases. So while they knew that Dylan had conversations with people through Snap, they likely either weren't able to figure out who she was having the conversations with, or even if they were, they wouldn't have been able to actually see the conversation. So this interview was very important to dig in to find out what Dylan states actually took place in those messages and when. But now that we know that she volunteered the information to Williamson, probably because she thought Williamson had the information already, we can eliminate when this conversation didn't happen and when it likely did. And the results of that are mind-boggling. But here's what happens. We know, and this is where it gets crazy. We know that Quinn posted this snap on November 13th, 2022 at 2:46 a.m. in Boise, Idaho. So he was absolutely making sure that the whole world knew that he was in Boise, Idaho at 2:46 a.m. Well, that's 1:46 a.m. Moscow time. And I believe he was in Boise at 2:46. Some people believe that he wasn't, but I believe he was, because I believe he knew better, and he better be in Boise, and he better get an alibi because of what happens next. You see, as I go through all the phone activity from pertinent times, and her phone activity doesn't start until 2:10, right? We don't know what her phone activity looks like before 2:10 because this is when the document shows the release of the phone activity. So we don't know if she's talking to Quinn at 1:46. All we know is she texted Gower, "Are you driving by chance tonight?" at 2:10. But then in between texting Gower, "Are you driving?" and I don't believe Gower has anything to do with this. So, but in between when she texts Gower, all of a sudden she starts getting these Snapchat messages: incoming, incoming, outgoing, incoming, incoming, outgoing, incoming, incoming. Then Gower texts back, "I am," but Dylan never ever responds to him. Almost 2 hours go by until 3:51 when the Brittany Fernandez contact is created. And then 4:19:07 is when Bethany makes the first phone call to her. As she's going through and this phone activity is happening, the only other activity on Snapchat is this outgoing message at 4:27:52. Everything else is identified. The only other thing that's not identified other than the Snapchat messages at 4:27 and 2:11 is the outgoing call that Dylan made. But in the statement, she doesn't say that she called Quinn. She said that they messaged each other. Now, Grok and I have been going through this because after all of this, there's nothing that happens till after 5 a.m. And Grok says that this is not there's no way this is a two-way conversation. This is one single outgoing Snapchat. So in the video I did the other day, when I first discovered the Quinn angle, or I first discussed it, I focused in on this 4:27:52 snap message. And I thought maybe it was a interaction and it just logged it as an outgoing message because it was the only one that made sense based on what she was saying around the time frame that she talked to Quinn. But when I put it into Grok analyzed it, and it's just an outgoing message. So there was never an incoming message. So this couldn't have been a two-way conversation at 4:27:52 between Dylan and Quinn. Could be just a one-way message to Quinn, but it couldn't be a two-way conversation. So it pretty much eliminates that as being a possible time frame that she had this conversation with Quinn. So there's no way at 4:27:52 when that outgoing Snapchat happened that she was having a text conversation with Quinn with the back and forth like you see right here. There's no way the 4:27 call was made to Quinn because she's talking about a text conversation. The only text conversation she could have had with Quinn during the time frame that the Celebrite extraction shows was the conversation that was happened at 2:11 a.m., 2 hours before the crime. Dylan is literally told on herself that Quinn told her what to say before the crime ever happened. The only, using just the Celebrite extraction and her statements to Williamson, not to Gooch, but to Williamson. She lied to Gooch. Williamson got her to tell her about this conversation with Quinn. The only way it could have happened was with Snapchat. And the only time that was available for this to happen with Snapchat was at 2:11. And the fact that she says this happened during the crime, someone's in our house, and he was like, well, you guys have a party house. Well, nobody was in their house for another 2 hours. That means the only way this works is if he was telling her what to say 2 hours in advance of the crime. Now, that could have been her messaging in him at 4:27:52, the one outgoing message saying it's done or whatever. But there's no other legitimate, unless they have something that they haven't released, there's no other legitimate way Dylan could have had a text message conversation with Quinn in the time frame we're discussing other than at 2:11. It looks to me like she texts Gower. She wanted to go get something to eat. Quinn started messaging her, telling her she better stay there, what was going to happen, what she needed to say. And that's why she never messaged Gower back for him to come get her to take her anywhere. She sat in that room and did exactly like she was supposed to. And that's why most of the actual interview with Williamson, we're not seeing and we may never see. What do they really know about Dylan at this point? And when we look at the realities of this, I mean, these are the realities of this. We got Quinn, who we know is posting Snap messages showing that he's in Boise at 1:46 a.m. Moscow time. So we know Quinn's on Snap right here. Here's the timeline of Dylan's Celebrite extraction, starting with her phone activity at 2:10. Text Eric, are you driving by chance? But then right after she texts Eric, she has all of these conversations with somebody on Snapchat. 25 minutes and 17 seconds after Quinn, we know, is on Snapchat. So I believe the odds of this being the Quinn conversation are about, I would give it about 98%, if not 99, based on everything I know now. I think it's 100%. So, and with this being the only extraction, as you're going to see, this is the only time frame that this could have, this conversation that she had with Quinn could have happened. You can see it's incoming, Quinn, outgoing, Dylan, incoming, Quinn, outgoing, Dylan, incoming, Quinn. Tell them it's a party house. Drunk person's just walking through. Don't call 911. Do something else. Now, then when Eric texts back, hey, I am, Dylan never texted him again. Why? Because, well, she's been told what to do at this point. So it looks to me like, just from a straight up investigative perspective, no conspiracy, Dylan wanted to go get some food and texted Gower if he was driving, but received and sent several snaps. And then when Gower texted back that he was driving, she ignored it. And according to her testimony, just stayed in her room. So I'm not bringing in Gower as some kind of conspirator here, because that's conspiracy. This is evidence. This is actual evidence. So after that, we get nothing until this strange Brittany Fernandez, whatever the heck contact is created. So between this contact and the next activity, which is the first call from Bethany, you've got the crime right here. Now, all of my investigation into this case tells me, and I know people don't want to hear this, but it tells me that the crime actually started at approximately 4:12 a.m. It was over at 4:19 a.m. Four perpetrators ascend in and they commit the crime. The evidence from the crime scene is very clear to me. Kaylee is in the living room, because I believe Dylan is telling the truth about the events around the crime, because I can corroborate it 18 ways from Sunday with all of the evidence that we have around the crime. It corroborates the story. It corroborates the story nobody wants to believe, especially law enforcement. Nobody wants to believe. And that's the fact that Kaylee was in the living room with Murphy. Dylan's in her bedroom. Xana and Ethan are in their bedroom. Bethany is downstairs in her bedroom. Maddie is upstairs in her bedroom. This is all at 4:12 a.m. A perp scales the third floor balcony, comes in and begins attacking Maddie. Kaylee goes up the stairs, confronts the attacker, screams, "Someone's here," runs back down the stairs, and as she's running down the stairs, the other three perps barrel through the back door. One hits Kaylee with blunt force. The other two run in and attack Ethan and Xana. The one that was chasing Kaylee down the stairs and the one that hit her with blunt force pick her up, probably drag her upstairs into the bed with Maddie, and finish the assault. Once the assault is finished on Xana and Ethan, they all ascend out. Two go out the back slider, two go down the staircase and out the front door. That is what my total investigation into this case shows me. And then I think about the picture that the defense attached to the motion that has all of this testimony in. And the picture they have attached just happens to be the view that Dylan has out her door when she opens it. And look, it's straight to this window right here. Look at this little guy's head in the window that would be looking in. Maddie's upstairs being attacked. Kaylee comes walking by Dylan's door up the stairs. Dylan opens the door, signals the people out the back that Kaylee's going upstairs and they better do something. They barrel through this back door at this time. Kaylee screams, "Someone's here," as she's coming down. She's attacked. Whoa. She is attacked right here. The other two have already run directly into Ethan and Xana's room. One jumps right on top of Ethan, and they literally have to hold Ethan down for almost a minute while the attack is going on Xana. And those are straight up from all the evidence in the case. That's what I believe happened. That's what I believe it shows me in 19 different ways. But here's what that means right here with Bethany calling Dylan. They've identified for us every single person that was contacted throughout this situation. Dylan places a call to Xana, no seconds. Kaylee, no seconds. Calls Bethany back. Now they talk for 41 seconds. I don't believe Bethany had foreknowledge of this. I believe Dylan's using Bethany in this situation. That's why I believe these messages are organic between Dylan and Bethany. But then she calls Maddie, no seconds. Certainly it would log a second if she let the phone do anything. She makes these calls just because she feels like it's creating some type of alibi for herself. As you continue on, then the texts start. No one's answering. I'm really confused right now. In fact, Bethany probably said call them, so she's just following along what Bethany told her to do just to make it look good. Really confused right now. Then she texts Kaylee, what's going on? Bethany back. Dylan to Bethany, ski mask. Shut up, actually. He had something over his head and mouth. I'm not kidding, freaked out. So am I. My phone's gonna die. Come to my room, run down here. Then you've got this call that she makes to Ethan. Outgoing call, normal outgoing call. You can see that she actually, I don't believe at this point, based on this, maybe she didn't know that Ethan was in the room with Xana at this point. Some people have speculated that some of those messages that Ethan was receiving during the day saying that Xana was cheating on him was a way to try to keep Ethan from being there that night. So she actually makes a call to Ethan because it's 12 seconds. It logs. Nobody answers. 12-second call. You don't have enough time for any conversation to have happened. So, and then text Bethany again. Come to my is better than being alone. Then we know, based on the video of 1112, the audio of it, you can hear Dylan, I believe Dylan, come straight out the front door of that house and a car door shut. And then we have a phone call that's being made to somebody that they don't want to identify. This would be an easy identifiable call. Even though the Celebrite extraction doesn't put a name on it in this particular box, no doubt that they would have been able to get from the call detail records exactly who this phone call was made to. So the fact that they have never identified who this call was made to tells me this call was made to the person driving the black Ford Explorer, who they obviously called first instead of 911, which I believe was possibly the brother of one of the victims. And I've analyzed this phone call through Gemini, through the Bing AI, but I trust Grok more than all of them because Gemini tried to tell me it was a FaceTime call, but I had it do so many different runs on it, and this is the 42711 outgoing call, and it was made at 42711. It's com.apple in-call service outgoing call. Source file is the iPhone, mobile library, core duet, people, interaction, tables, interactions. Tells you the byte size and what this entry tells us. The precise timestamp of when the call was initiated is 42711. It was an outgoing call made from this phone. It was the Apple's native phone app call handling service. It was the iOS logs, many interactions, calls, messages, etc. here. It was an outgoing call, not a message or FaceTime. This is a traditional phone call, which means it would have shown up on the call detail records. They know who this call was made to. The fact that they will not identify it tells me that they don't want anybody to know that this was possibly likely, I believe, the brother of one of the victims in this case. And it seems to me like even the defense was wanting to keep that out, but maybe not. We don't know. We haven't got to trial yet. These calls at 42730 and 42740 have been identified as calls made to Ethan. So she's still calling Ethan. Here was a call that was actually made to Kaylee at 42747 because she let it actually ring. Then you have this interaction right here that's not an interaction. It's just an outgoing snap message. She sent somebody a snap, but there was no incoming snap. So this couldn't have been the conversation with Quinn. Then it identifies a outgoing call to Xana. She only let it ring for 3 seconds. And then she texts Kaylee again, please answer, 432:57. This is all of the activity, y'all. There's nothing else. Then it starts at 5:02. When you start at 5:02 and you start going through this, there's no messages here. This is just editing photos. She edits photos all the way up to 6:25. There's no message. I've had Grok go through all this. None of this is messaging. At 8 o'clock is when she finally logs into Instagram. There is literally nowhere other than right here, which is just an outgoing message. That couldn't be it. Right here, which was a phone call. Dylan said she texted him. So, and she said he texted her back. So it couldn't be this one. It couldn't be this phone call. That's not a text. Everything else is accounted for. The only other thing that's not accounted for in all of the phone extraction that could have been the messages she's referring to with Quinn all happened at 2:11:17, 2 hours before the crime starts. And that is what you call knowing in advance what is going to happen. We've got a strong case. And think about, I wish I could put her on the stand with these questions, but I have a strong suspicion that they already know. And that's why they didn't want her going on the stand. And that's why I've focused in so much, and I've tried to get this across to people, what Williamson would have done in this interview, because she's followed the outline to a T and she's executed it perfectly up until the point where we can no longer determine what she did. We leave off at the free narrative. This is where Williamson says, Dylan, go back to the beginning. Tell me everything. As she's going through all that Williamson is saying is so empty in the middle. I can't stand it. She's not chiming in at all because that's what she's supposed to do. Dylan is volunteering everything to Williamson during the free narrative. She's letting her in on the text messages with Quinn. But you see, here's what happens after the free narrative. Then phase 6 starts, questioning and clarification. The questioning and clarification phase begins after it is clear the victim is finished providing a free narrative. This phase is a time to ask follow-up questions, seek legally relevant information, and to clarify statements. Questioning and clarification. After the narrative phase, it's time to focus on legally relevant information. Establish the jurisdiction, the timeline, the sequence of events. It says during the abuse. Establish the number of times the abuse occurred. I mean, it's going through and it's basically focusing on trafficking in this outline, but she follows the same outline. Separate out each event. Ask about sensory detail. Use the questions continuum. Stay away from the blaming statements. Open-ended questions. Initially, ask general open-ended questions. Open-ended questions allow the victim to select specific details they will discuss. Open-ended questions encourage multiple world responses. Consider using the tell me method. You said he took you in a room. Tell me all the things that were in that room. You said that other time. Tell me about that other time. This method usually results in a short narrative without many details, but allows you to ask follow-up questions, such as, you mentioned that Quinn and you texted each other about this situation. Tell me more about that. Open-ended questions. How and when? Where the victim got into the game, how the victim ever tried to leave the game. More open-ended questions, specific focus questions. Begin to narrow down details through more specific questions. What were you doing when he came over? What did your mom say after you told her? These are not leading questions. Why would you be talking to Quinn at 2:11 about things that haven't happened yet in 2 hours? This is where Williamson, I'm sure, would have dug in on that. And here's what drives me crazy, y'all. We don't get to see any of this. Here's what I don't know if everybody's caught about this Williamson interview. Right here where she starts the narrative part of this. She says, I want you to go back to the beginning, like Saturday or when the night started. No, go back to Saturday day and just kind of walk me through everything that you remember happening. So Dylan starts doing it. Again, remember Erin Williamson follows her outline to a T. All she says is okay, and But you see, you get to right here and it talks about when we got home like around 5-ish, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe later. I can't exactly remember. And then it goes right to, I think it was after the second time that I heard what I heard was I could hear someone crying. You see this? From 5 o'clock all the way to the second time I heard somebody crying is all missing. We don't get to see any of it. This entire portion of this interview, just in this narrative page, is missing. I find interesting. So you keep on going. She's still, okay, okay. I mean, following it just like a pro. She isn't interrupting Dylan, letting Dylan tell everything. Okay. Then you get down here. It's weird. It's weird. And I text her. And then you get right here. And like I saw Xana. She's at home. And I kept checking on Xana and Ethan's Snapchat map. You, once again, and oh my God, like someone is here without the oh my gosh. She just said someone's here. You see how this works? She starts to get into what happened after the crime, right? When they're talking about calling their friends over. Boom. And it's all cut out. And it jumps straight back to Kaylee talking about someone's here. She's still, okay. Yeah, okay. Now, as she's talking about the gun, right? And they're going through just talking about the gun, the thing that you're drawing on top. Help me understand. I don't really understand it. It could have been like this, where, and that's it. They don't let us see where she digs in on the text messages and the pictures and Quinn and everything else. Why is that? Because you can bet that's the part of this thing that we may never get to see unless we really just put some pressure on them for them to release it like everything else in this case.
Bratland.
50 in the middle. 50 in the middle.
Farley has a Harley. Farley has a Harley.
In Bratland. In Bratland.
50 in the middle. 50 in the middle.
Farley has.
Yeah, so based on what I know about the way that Williamson was conducting that interview and how she was digging in at the end into, the mask of the intruder, and, that's where you get into the statement Dylan made where she said, well, I opened the door and I seen him, and I was in kind of a frozen shock phase. And then I shut the door, and they literally went through that entire interview and pulled that exact little phrase out of that entire long interview, frozen shock phase. That's where it came from. But the way she was digging in on those questions and on the gun question, never once were we able to see her dig in on the pictures and the text messages to Quinn. They just cut it off. But I assure you that Williamson absolutely would have dove in on that, because she prepped it in the beginning, made Dylan actually spill some of the beans during her narrative phase, and then they cut the thing off before we can see all of the really good stuff. So I don't know. I think we should demand at this point in this case to be able to see the entire transcript of what Williamson said to Dylan, the number one witness in this case. How are they hiding that from us? Why can't we see that interview, or at least a full transcript of it? That's what we all should demand right now, because I would love to see how Dylan tried to explain that away to Williamson further in that interview, and how Williamson probably determined some things that we aren't supposed to see. Let me know your thoughts. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Post your comments, your thoughts, your criticisms. Until next time, because I got much more on this subject, Pavarotti's out.
Bratland.
50 in the middle. 50 in the middle.
Farley has a Harley. Farley has a Harley.
In Bratland. In Bratland.
50 in the middle. 50 in the middle.
Can I be your superhero?